There is reason to be hopeful in our country today. There is reason to hope, not because we agree on all of the issues, but because on the issues that we disagree upon, we still disagree as good people.
Well, the United States is the most polarized democracy in the world.
It's exhausting.
They'll be like, the other side never listens. Like, only our side was like willing to hear anybody's opinion. And then the other, like, I will hear the exact same thing from the other side.
Lack of trust.
Totally unconnected.
What had happened?
I do feel like there's some division.
We've become more reactive.
And it's a hard climate to be honest in.
No one can say anything. It's like walking through a minefield.
Between technology, between politics, between religion.
The country is so divided and so polarized.
So, welcome to the thick of it.
It's embarrassing. My name's Joseph. I'm going to drive from San Francisco to New York City, asking every stranger I come across the exact same question. How did we lose connection with our neighbors, and how do we get it back?
Rick, right?
Rick.
Joseph, it's so good to meet you.
You too, man.
I am a firm believer that developing a curiosity in people, or a curiosity in strangers, is the cure to a polarized and an isolated world. Now, it's one thing to say that. My hope is it's another thing to go out and prove that.
This polarization is like America's monster.
We need to understand each other. We need to calm down the temperature.
I'm going to make that case and prove it to you. Across a cross-country cinematic road trip, aside from chatting with every stranger I come across that's open to sharing their wit and wisdom, I'll be sitting down with experts to figure out where this tension and polarization actually came from. We're going to learn how to connect with people that we lost connection with. We're going to learn how to get through the difficult conversations. I want to make a film that helps people believe in people again.
Reagan said, how can we love our country without loving our countrymen? Bill Clinton said, there's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed by what's right with America.
I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm simply going to make a case that if we get curious in people, even if we disagree with them, there is adventure to be had and knowledge to be gained. In a polarized and isolated world, we are going to make a case for curiosity.
Okay, America, let's have ourselves a chat.
Let's go talk to strangers across America. What could possibly go? I don't even want to ask that, actually.
What you find is that the gap between people is less about politics, although it's obviously part of it, and more about a lack of empathy and understanding, which has been crowded out by fear. If you can deal with that, you might find that there's actually more, even politically, in common, but it's not allowed to breathe. The studies show us that whereas 20 years ago people had 4 good friends, now they have 2. There isn't the time, the inclination, the space to make new friends, to build understandings. Again, this is not about coming up with some beautiful consensus about politics. That's not the point. The point is at least to have the opportunity, whether it could be in church, it could be in a civic organization of some kind, something that puts you in touch with people who are not from your background.
Well, you can talk a big talk and add some fun music to your montage, but eventually it's going to come time to actually talk to strangers across America, which, by the way, for those introverts out there, is a little bit intimidating. So between pacing the streets of San Francisco, not saying a word to anyone, wondering what would happen to the budget if I added 200 paid actors across America, and wondering how deeply offensive it would be for my sweet, sweet mother to say don't talk to strangers, and then for me to go make an entire documentary about just that. I mean, approaching total strangers on camera to talk about the political climate of America, who's going to volunteer for that? Well, at that very moment, this flew by. I could talk to them about that though.
So is this a fairly standard Tuesday, or?
I'd say so, 100%.
While I was apprehensive to ask these two about the state of a polarized United States,
I try to ride every day.
That's so cool.
I simply couldn't be stopped in asking these two what they were riding on. I'd never seen one of these before. Some genuine curiosity and all of that nervousness just went away. Turns out, it is so much easier to be fascinated than trying to be fascinating. Hayden and Jonathan were members of the Float Pack, a San Francisco community of one-wheelers, because I guess the name Cyclists on a Budget was taken. And when I told them I was literally filming a documentary on community, they were kind enough to invite me to their weekly midnight ride through the streets of San Francisco. That was it. One question, 1 ounce of curiosity, and I was given an invitation by the cool kids.
This is like pure giddy childlike wonder.
I think people would be blown away, truly blown away, by how many people mistake curiosity for charisma. So a little while later, I rolled up, ready to try and keep up and ask many, many questions, and also pray that I didn't offend anyone by bringing a bicycle. I mean, they knew that I was going to, but like, it's the one-wheelers. They literally had one rule.
Sorry, Mum, but I think I may have joined a gang. Right along with you guys. This is so cool.
Have to share activities together, do things together to form those friendships. So I think that's true now, it's true in ancient times, it's just true about human beings. You have to have a relationship of caring and trust before anybody's going to care about your ideas.
For a cross-country case for curiosity, I don't think there could be a better piece of evidence to get started.
Tell my students, what do you do when you go bowling or you go to this club or that club? You don't talk about really politics. You talk about your family and you talk about events, and you begin to have an understanding that even if you differ with the other person on a political issue, there are certain things that you have in common in your daily lives.
Man, friends, one wheels, EUCs, it's a vibe. With everybody, it's like a big family, so great place to be.
Yeah, I just moved here a month and a half ago, and people were like, hey Lynn, like, how are you gonna make friends? I was like, they have a one-wheel community. Like, friends is not gonna be an issue.
Yeah, so there's a whole class of interventions that are being studied to show what works the best to like depolarize people. The ones that are most effective are ones that reduce the salience of our political identity.
It doesn't matter what you come out with, there's always love here, and you're always more than welcome to enjoy the experience.
You and I may disagree strongly on politics, but maybe we're both Manchester United fans, or we're both Jazz fans, right? Or we're both fathers. And when we make a connection over that, then we can have a conversation about politics that's not gonna drive us apart.
Growing up in San Francisco, I've always seen it's very diverse around here. People from all walks of life.
This entire group was a collection of differences. Age, gender, political views, skill set.
I've seen kids.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if that's allowed, but they're killing it. They're doing amazing.
But it turns out, if you can find one commonality.
It could be a faith institution. It could be that you and I go to church every week together and we work together. And so when we disagree about politics, that's okay, because I know that he's a good dude.
That unlocks the door to everything else.
You've got to form a friendship with the people that you have a difference with before we talk about intellectual differences or religious differences.
I think it's amazing that this one-wheel electric device built this new friendship. We wouldn't be friends otherwise. No, yeah, it's just we come from two different walks of life. Who knows how we could have met.
I think everything else might actually be possible.
In the old days, when I wanted to go watch a movie, I went to something called Blockbuster. So I think people need to find those spaces.
To San Francisco on purpose because I was going to find my people, and I found my people.
Okay, let's go chat with some strangers.
So your question is, why is it that we've lost touch with our neighbor? The first step in solving any problem is recognizing that there is one.
Say we establish that we are more polarized or we're not as connected, with our neighbor. How did it happen?
So it was time to ask the great people of America.
Okay, I'm with the coolest bikers in Riverside, and I'm asking the same question that I've asked people from San Francisco to New York. If there is a division or even just a lack of connectivity, where do you feel like that came from?
Oh wow, that's tough.
I gotta think of an answer here.
It's a real deep one. If you could just solve world peace for me in like 10 seconds, that would be tremendous.
So
And the responses came in all variations and from all directions.
Maybe the advancements in technology.
Social media is kind of a big downfall, like
Political correctness.
our disconnection started because we were too scared to turn around. We were too scared to look at each other and actually talk to each other.
Geographically where you live, now people live around other people who believe like them. There's like red states and blue states.
Then along came isolation by way of convenience.
We live in a time where we have to go out of our way to connect with people.
Well, how do you connect with people? You have more friends here and you're not even from here.
Look. I don't have friends here. I have acquaintances. Big difference.
Everything is this instead of this.
The more we use technology to stay together, the more we drifted apart.
You don't see conversations on the street very much. World with your AirPods in and walking across campus.
I mean, you can't even go to a restaurant without people just...
We have reached a time where it's just easier, that isolation is more natural.
Talking on the internet and not really interacting with people.
Yes.
So, a lot of people just turn into introverts in a sense.
I kind of forgot how to do it over the last
After
couple of
COVID,
years.
I think people just lost their mind.
Yeah.
I could sit in my office on my computer all day long. I could order my groceries from Instacart. I could, order whatever else I need from Amazon. I could get in my car, go somewhere, come back into my garage and never have to see anyone.
That's what my parents used to do. You go and introduce yourself to your neighbors.
Right.
And we don't really do things like that anymore. And I don't know if it's true crime, which I love, but the odds that I'm gonna get murdered by my neighbor are rather low.
Listen, you're
One of them has my keys now, and I'm
49 to 50% of Americans feel lonely most of the time.
And just living in virtual communities and not having physical interaction, I think that is a dangerous thing.
As it turns out, there are very real implications in keeping the daily practice of keeping myself to myself.
We're lonelier than we've ever been, and we're more isolated than we've ever been. It actually impacts our health, everything from cardiovascular health to immune response. Just last year, the U.S. Surgeon General released a Surgeon General advisory. Some of the research that's in there shows that being socially disconnected was, in terms of its impacts on our health, equal to smoking up to 15 cigarettes per day.
It can be very easy for individuals to keep their circle small. I do a lot of traveling for work, but I don't always speak to people on the airplane.
On an individual, even local level, what's one small thing that someone could do to make things a little bit better in their own life?
Knowing your neighbors. So even just knowing 6 of your neighbors around you, research has shown can dramatically impact your well-being.
Make some cookies.
Right.
Bring some bread.
What kind of an effect does that have when you start interacting with people around you? How different do you two feel?
I feel safer. And also, most of the time too, I'll realize any preconceived notions I had about someone, there's a lot more to them than just that. When you get to know them, and you know their name, you know their kids' names, you know their dog's name, and you know these little things about them, it just bridges this gap that's in our heart sometimes, and we feel a little less lonely.
At a time of convenient isolation in the virtual age, I'd highly recommend meeting folks.
Get off this all the time.
I believe we can be really, really unlike each other, and yet still really, really like each other.
Everything is, texting and TikTok. I call it the new crack.
in a polarized America, there's loneliness and then there's division.
I've been thinking about how we lose connection when we judge each other based on our ideas and our beliefs on things.
We assume the worst of others in an attempt to, do right by everyone.
By way of religion, race, soccer team, pick your polarized poison. You don't have to go very far in your imagination to see the effects of a divide because of differences. And then, and then there's politics across America.
Like the state of American dialogue, it's either conflict avoidance or completely off the rails. And we don't know how to stay in that middle. We don't know how to stay in the heat where it's uncomfortable, but where it's still productive.
Well, basically everyone's just with the same thing. We all want our safety for our family, safety for ourselves. We want to be productive and have a country that's prosperous. And the division that we're seeing is basically caused by the politicians. They're putting everybody at odds.
State to state, there is a consensus that there is no consensus, which is catchy, although not ideal. But it does seem, across the red and the blue states, that a vast majority of people are tired of polarization.
Oh, that is something else. Seriously, the amount of credibility that just flew into this documentary all at once. Unbelievable. That's a great looking shot.
Yeah, my name is Mari Giles.
I'm Amy. I'm a political fundraiser.
I work in the space of communications, marketing, strategy in my professional life.
Now, very rarely do you see supply without a demand, so is there anyone that benefits from all of this? Put another way, in terms of polarization, have we simply drifted apart, or are we being pushed apart?
And I never want to force an opinion on anyone. Yeah. A few people have alluded to the idea that, oh no, there's money in polarization. There's huge, I was wondering if, for whatever degree you're comfortable speaking, are there incentives for polarization?
Yeah, so the incentives for polarization are really two-part. One, thugs, dictators, and bad guys have used division and polarization to maintain the status quo for centuries.
So when people have those fears, what political leaders do is they manipulate them, they echo them, they name them, they give them an ideology.
Because as long as they can convince the citizens that they're too divided to solve any problem, then you need an authoritarian.
It's both something that happens from below and from above.
You also have these industrial complexes that make hundreds of millions of dollars every year.
Even how we consume information through media, it's you get different outlets are encouraged to make the most jaw-dropping sensational news, which is often pretty polarizing and divisive.
I think we agree, 95% of the issues we would agree on, but the media likes to focus on the 1 or 2% that we don't.
Yeah, there are a lot of incentives in the media to go to the extreme. It gets clicks, it gets likes, it gets engagement. The problem is that the incentives for the politics and the polarization are so high that many are unwilling to show the political courage to take the conversation to principle.
To be able to win in a campaign today, we're doubling the spending of money every cycle to amounts that are insane.
Is that right?
Yeah, every 4 years, if you look at the amount of money that was spent 4 years ago, that's spent this year, close to doubling those amounts. What does that do? Well, it creates a couple of things. The only way you get in is if you do everything you have to and can do to get money.
Mass emailing that goes to some other state, some other thing that's asking you for $5, $10, or even $1, and they always sound psychotic. And if they don't get it, the world's gonna collapse.
When a candidate's running for political office, they're trying to win. And a great motivator to fill out a ballot is anger, it's frustration. And that's happening everywhere.
The easiest way to get money, and I work in marketing strategy and I've done it for 25 years of my career, if you can get emotion into things, then people act.
They are meant to scare you, they're meant to rile you up, they're meant to anger you. Those are awful. I've asked when I've gotten hey, can you approve this language on something or a campaign I'm on? And I'm take out the urgent. Stop.
You have a client that wants to win. You have a lot of public attention and pressure that really incentivize saying something, and you're left with the question of, is this good for the country if I put this rhetoric out there?
I don't mind being truthful, hey, we're 13 days away from the election. That's the truth. But we're not 13 days away and we're going to die. We're 13 days away.
It used to be about driving the leadership imperatives of me as a candidate. Now it's almost exclusively about ad hominem attacks on the other person and anyone associated with him or her, so that the person who's on my side is afraid enough to say, well, they can't win. If they win, then oh my gosh, my freedom, my everything I want in my life is over.
Our incentives are designed towards that kind of frustration because people want to win.
It will stop when there's less of a demand. So it will stop when people stop responding to those.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
That's an...
It's going to be on the people.
You know, I think the biggest things that individuals need to do is recognize that while all these systemic issues exist, we're the ones that created it. We have to remember that we are the country as citizens.
It's community and culture that lead, and the politicians will follow.
At least when it comes to political campaigns, we have to change the incentives from division to unity. It doesn't mean the candidates that we have are going to change. It means that the way they play the game to get elected is going to change.
Ridiculous. There are a lot of people who are incentivized to polarize as an existential crisis. If they beat us, then everyone's going to die, democracy's going to die, and we all fail, when the real thing is democracy dies and we all fail if we buy into that. If we buy into the fact that our neighbor is not just wrong, but evil.
That's the rule I have on both radio and TV, is we don't reward bad behavior. So if someone is doing something outrageous so they can get a social media moment or they can get on national TV, I'm not going to talk about it. Because it's just like with teenagers. If you reward bad behavior, you get more bad behavior.
Oh, I love that analogy. Myron
and Sherry.
Sherry, and what is it that you two are up to today?
We're on an adventure. This is our 50th wedding anniversary, and so we just traveled in a big circle from Kansas to Great Falls, Montana, to Utah.
Goodness. As someone that's got a long way to go until New York City, I'd probably ask you for your best road trip advice too. Where do you want to start?
Next time, get a bigger car.
Oh, hey, a more comfortable car, so you don't feel all the bumps.
Yeah.
I love America, and this might be the most American thing I've ever seen. Now, there could be a temptation to stop here. I mean, if the end goal here in a polarized America was to simply never disagree again, we could use that age-old phrase and simply say, each to their own. We could blame the media, get out of the house a little bit more, maybe even find some common ground along the way, and we'll never have to disagree again. And while I'd simply love to say that we solved polarization in record time, I think it's about 18, maybe 20 minutes, there is a little more to it.
I think the divisions come from assumptions or lack of generosity towards those things you don't know about, towards the unknown.
We talk about the U.S. as a melting pot. It's more like a kind of freezer in which each section is off by its own. And when we talk about religious tolerance or coexistence, what that really means is we don't know the other person, we just tolerate them.
Wow.
There's a big difference between toleration and knowing somebody, right?
So if you don't have a lot of contact with a certain kind of person, nationality, ethnicity, religion, whatever, your imagination is going to make up the difference. And that's often not kind. Or it's not generous. I'll put it that way. It's often not generous.
Toleration is really a kind of ticket not to sort of know somebody. Oh yeah, that mosque, whatever.
Each to their own.
Yeah, each to their own, we're good. And then suddenly some leader says, oh, that mosque, what's going on behind that mosque? And what's going on? What's happening on Friday? And you have their prayers, and and suddenly what you tolerated yesterday becomes something you hate or you fear.
It's what is underrepresented in your life is overrepresented in your imagination.
It's not that we should never argue or we shouldn't talk about divisive things. We just have to figure out how to do it the right way.
I wanted to ask questions as to how we navigate this division as opposed to just trying to get through it unscathed, because you do not overcome polarization by becoming passive. Let's start with people who've been coming up to you somewhat recently and saying, aren't you nervous? Aren't you scared? I've not been there. What are people asking you?
Yeah, we're just a couple weeks out from the election, and folks who know my work are assuming, as anyone would, that I'm a wreck.
Sure.
The country is so divided and so polarized, and this moment that has felt like the cliff that we're all going to fall off of. A few years ago, I would have predicted the same thing about myself. But it's sort of funny when somebody asks me that, and I kind of question whether I should tell them the truth.
Yeah.
You know, the truth being, I'm doing great. Like, I'm so sorry, I'm doing great. At this point in the last few years, through Braver Angels, through the ideas in my book, through the people I've gotten to meet, the conversations I've been able to have, the rooms I've been in that have been politically mixed. Like, you're in those rooms, and you see people looking at each other. They're disagreeing. They're surprised that they can be in this room. They're surprised at the things that they're learning from each other. They're surprised at the common ground that turns out to be there.
Apparently, and I'm hearing this just like you, civil disagreement is not just possible, but vital.
Critical that we disagree.
No, I believe 100% disagreement is needed for society to do well.
One of the hallmarks of democracy is that we can disagree. Disagreement isn't inherently bad at all.
The Beatles made it through the challenge. They grew because of the conflicts. And the, greatest songs were created from them. That's amazing.
We're meant to be individuals. We're not meant to be the same person.
And we don't want a world full of the same boring people.
God took his time making everyone.
And apparently, through an organization just named Braver Angels, apparently commonly facilitated nationwide local civil debates could also be marketed as a magic show.
Yeah, at Braver Angels, you go into a conversation about a really hard issue and you come out of it feeling better about the world. And I said it super casually, and they were like, wait, can you pause for a moment? How is that possible?
I attended a number of these civil debates across the country, one in an appropriately named bipartisan cafe. And I have to tell you, the most radical thing I experienced was how not at all radical it was.
People don't think these conversations can happen. People think some issues are beyond the pale, some ideas are beyond the pale. And all we do is we try to demonstrate that if you hold yourself to the right format, if you bring in the right spirit, then there is absolutely nothing that is outside the bounds of conversation.
But we didn't have any idea that would turn into thousands of these workshops.
There were ground rules laid out, a mediator, an explanation on communication tools.
We're going for a totally different dynamic. We don't want any crosstalk, interruptions. We're going for deep listening and respect.
I even watched a debate change their point of discussion in order to discuss something that was perfectly splitting the room in half. I mean, surely you're just asking for trouble at that point.
So I'd like to ask the speaker, at what point would you assess that the speaker assess?
I've done a lot of workshops with Braver Angels and the Braver Politics Sphere. I've done them with the average American. I've done them with elected officials. You ask them instead on a topic, instead of getting into their point of view, you ask them to say, ask the question of the other person. Tell me about your life and the experiences in your life that shape the way you view this issue. It's a completely different question. It's a completely different dialogue. And I have seen people that have known each other who are on the opposite aisles ask that question, and then suddenly at the end of that discussion, they're giving each other a hug and saying, I had no idea that you grew up like that and that happened. That's what happened to me.
And while the topics differed, while convictions were high,
Who talks about the citizen in this election? Not one candidate. Trump doesn't talk about it, and Biden hadn't mentioned the people.
not a single angry interaction. Were we just lucky?
In a way that you learn about other people, in a way that you learn about yourself, in a way that even if nobody's minds gets changed, people's hearts can get changed.
But it just shows them it's possible to have an interesting conversation. Yeah. And by the end of it, you learn that, okay, the other side doesn't think what I thought they thought about this, right? And maybe there is actually a pathway for like a third option in solving this problem.
Was everyone just aware that they were in a documentary? Though, let's be honest, film cameras have never really been a deterrent for crazy behavior. What was happening that made this all work?
Is there a principle or a practice that you've learned in this circle that could be applied to a one-on-one during a dinner, like at Thanksgiving dinner, for instance? What's one thing that's done here that could be done there? Yeah? And let me grab the camera so I can ask.
Of the you, accusatory, and focus on the I statements, and keeping it civil by taking it not so personal.
I would also say listening to understand versus listening to respond.
Ask a question to understand.
Yeah.
Don't ask a question to convince. Don't ask a question for an aha moment.
And once they feel heard, then they might be willing to listen to a different point of view.
Curiosity. Like they knew the brand of this documentary before I got there.
You know, people never act out of anger just because, right? Like there's always something, at least in my opinion, I think there's always something that is causing them to act a certain way.
The fuel for polarization comes from the emotion, not the ideology.
Take the time to listen, you'll get everything you need, from how they're feeling to their mood. You can see it in their body language.
Yeah, just don't go to any assumptions. Just kind of give them a chance.
The topic itself is not emotional, aggressive, polarizing, but rather when an individual feels that their viewpoint has not been heard, considered, or respected. And curiosity is listening at its best.
Go and meet someone who really disagrees with you. See if you can find a way to disclose some of what you really feel honestly to that person in a way that they can receive it and really hear you. Then you've just done something marvelous, and that's part of what we need, right? So yeah, no, we don't need all of a sudden a bunch of people who are just calm all the time. What we need is people who are honest.
First of all, you get to hear their point of view. If I don't learn something every day, I haven't had a good day.
Oh my Rick, what a cool line.
Yeah, man. And so if I let people talk, I feel like I'm gonna learn something.
I have friends who are very knowledgeable about a myriad of topics that I just don't have any familiarity with, and I can lean on them.
In peaceful ways, reaching out to people who I know I disagree with, or who are very different than me, or even people I'm scared of, and like offer to have a conversation where I'm truly just seeking to understand them better.
If I only had friends who were only interested in what I'm interested in, then I'd be pretty much in short supply and at a loss.
To focus on the things we agree on instead of the little bit that we don't.
And so I might not be able to change electoral politics and get money out of campaigns tomorrow, but what I can do is when I wake up and go to work and talk to somebody and come across them and realize that they're voting for the candidate I don't believe in, I can sit there and say, tell me more, rather than how could you do that?
Once I see that over and over and over again, you know, that part of me that expects the monster around the corner is just gone. I am more confident in the potential of like American people to hold and handle everything and to grow stronger through everything than I am fearful about those things. That's the difference. It's not that the fear has gone away, it's that I have seen something that is so much more powerful.
There isn't someone that if you didn't know their story, you couldn't somehow love. And so, yeah, that's my best reason.
What are you, like, in the trailer? that's exactly the message of the film.
Fixing my man over to take it out his phone so he can see exactly what we going on. As I got my man up in the zone as he hearing me rhyme. I'm in bobbing his head having such a wonderful time. In the back off in the gray, you got my man with Under Armour. Y'all make it rain, man, to throw a couple dollars. Lady in the gray over there with the ripped jeans. As a matter of fact, doing big things. Got my man with the strength.
T.S. Eliot writes a play called The Cocktail Party. A woman feeling completely hopeless, feeling like she's carrying the weight of the world. In conversation, she says that I should really like to think that there's something wrong with me. Because if there isn't, then there's something wrong with the world itself, and that is much more frightening. Now, I'm not going to suggest for a second that there's something wrong with you or I. That's a real quick way to get someone to turn off your documentary. But I'm hoping that maybe, with enough curiosity and enough strangers, we hear something that maybe we haven't tried yet. It would be inhumane to put the civility of the world on the shoulders of one person. But it doesn't seem entirely out of reach to stretch out just a little. It could be a stranger in our town that we've passed by too many times to not know anything about them. It could be a topic that maybe makes no sense the other way, but maybe we haven't had the sense to try and see it the other way. Or maybe it's that friend, that family member that would appear less than that because of some ideological difference. Your business is your business, but maybe don't wait.
Years ago, I had an opportunity to go see George Carlin live in concert over here in New Orleans.
You saw George Carlin live?
I did not. I pushed it off, thinking, "Oh, I'll catch him on the next one." He died 3 months later, and then I was like, you know what? I'm never gonna be like, oh yeah, I need to pick up this double shift at work and miss out on possibly a one-in-a-lifetime experience. I'd much rather have been able to say I saw George Carlin live at least once.
If we're both discovering tools on how to bridge the divide, I mean, it would be a waste not to at least try it.
It's so important to just be so present with the person that you love. I mean, with people that you love.
My hope, if I can have one, is that we don't rely on an emergency for unity.
They say you only live once, and it seems pretty true. And like, you could say something to somebody that could, change their life for the better or the worse. You could lose somebody forever, or you could gain a best new friend. Just make sure you make every moment count, because you never know how many you got.
But when it comes to connecting with those that we've lost, that we don't wait for a time that's a little too little and a little too late.
So being present and taking that, just like 1 minute of every day to just like tell that person how much they mean to you.
I was just walking around trying to give away some Quran, spread the message of Islam.
You and I are going to be doing kind of the same thing for the next little while. We're chatting with complete strangers. How do you feel about that process? I'm a little nervous about what I'm doing. Are you at all?
I'm shaking, bro.
This is day one, is that right?
Yes. This is like minute 15.
It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you, brother.
It's been a treat.
Driving across America, from the west coast to the east coast, in a configurative S shape. A route that, where it has diversity, I hope makes up for the fact that it definitely lacks in fuel efficiency. I wanted to meet strangers from all over America, and it's proving to be one of the most thought-provoking and eye-opening experiences of my entire life. You make some incredible discoveries driving across this beautiful country. You come across this pattern that people believe the country is on fire and in complete unrest everywhere, except coincidentally the town that they're living in.
Yeah, I am a firm believer that most of the division it's much more myth than it is reality.
The problem that you have in the media is that you guys highlight the unusual and you suppress the usual.
I hear it all over the US, in red states and blue states, that some state far away, it's just crazy over there. I visit that state and they say the exact same thing about the state I just came from.
We could push it to 9, let's go to 10, and if there was an 11, we would go there.
Regardless of where I drove through, there were parents taking their kids to school, there was little acts of kindness, doors being held open. Not perfect, but certainly not on fire. But the greatest discovery, coincidentally on theme and on brand, is that if you were interested in becoming a bridge builder, it wouldn't actually be a solitary pursuit. Depolarizing America isn't some utopian ambition. It's not even a small underdog story anymore. The greatest discovery driving across America was seeing how many organizations and how many individuals were working to unite these United States.
So what you'll find, I'm sure you've encountered it more than I have, that's lots of things happening all over the place.
Yeah, there's a huge ecosystem of organizations and thought leaders
that are sharing tips and tools and really practical advice, and they're also bringing people together to practice and to learn.
I heard of game shows where players were forced to team up with someone from the other side of the political aisle. Came across refugee soccer.
People come to a different country, in this case here in America. There's so much that's unfamiliar. And it doesn't matter if you understand to speak each other's language at all, because soccer really is a universal language.
The Getting Along Academy helping younger generations regain hope and optimism for their country.
Every day I'm reading about millions and millions of people doing the work, and it fires me up. It fires me up.
Countless examples.
So this year my colleagues and I are building a new course on peacemaking.
There's been an explosion of depolarizing programs and organizations.
A huge number of organizations who are working very hard at the community level.
So it's not just that I think a good future is possible. I see the work. It's happening.
And one, the aforementioned Braver Angels, were about to begin their national convention in Wisconsin.
Braver Angels is the nation's largest grassroots organization that is bringing people together from all across the political spectrum.
And in terms of bridging the political divide, they were going to really commit to the skydive. Registration was regimented to make sure that the exact number of Republicans matched the exact number of Democrats that were in attendance.
Equal numbers, and we're not sort of equal numbers. We count them up, equal numbers.
And if that doesn't seem like a chemical reaction waiting to happen, every attendee would be wearing a lanyard, making it very clear who was who. What happened next was magic.
There is reason to be hopeful in our country today. There is reason to hope, not because we agree on all of the issues, but because on the issues that we disagree upon, we still disagree as good people.
When we first started Braver Angels, it was just 3 or 4 of us. We were going around the country, sleeping on people's couches, trying out the workshop.
Methods, training, giving them what they need to engage their communities, engage political leaders.
It only works if we listen to one another.
To be part of the solution and turn the tide on the toxicity that is tearing at the fabric of the nation.
Half conservative, half liberal, meeting together, just trying to talk to one another rather than at each other or about each other.
26 workshops.
727 points of agreement from all of those workshops.
I didn't realize how powerful this is.
We'll move forward to vote between the 2 middle issues.
Sat in multiple rooms where I would have not expected the conversation to move so gracefully.
The chosen topic for the Common Ground workshops for Braver Angels to concentrate on in the coming year all over the nation is immigration.
Leaving this place with a sense of grace and hope for our future and our nation.
They make it seem so complicated. Like it's so hard to speak to the American people across our disagreements. They insist on the idea that to run this country, we have to approach it as a zero-sum conflict, as a cultural civil war. And our leaders and our pundits, too many of them, only choose to speak to one half of the American people or the other. But if they just humanize us, they could speak to us all.
I think the most fulfilling thing is people's lives changing. People telling me that they now can get along with relatives. People telling me that they were starting to cut off somebody.
We've heard that from husbands and wives. We've heard that from estranged father and children. You know, we've heard that from longtime friends. When you actually find a way to learn and listen to one another, it's like you accomplish something that you truly never thought was possible.
Is there somebody in your family that has become strained, that the relationship has become strained, or that you no longer talk to as much? And yeah, we're all like, yeah, all of us. Well, I'm like, well, start there. There's no better place to start than there, right? Like, if we can't kind of resolve these issues within our own families, between our friends, like, what makes us think like we're gonna suddenly kind of build these bridges with all these strangers out there in the world, right? And I know that family is the toughest place to do this work, but I'm also, the flip side of that is if you can figure this out within your family, the rest is easy.
We have reason to believe in our prospects for a brighter American tomorrow, but it only works if we hear each other.
We have a shared mission. We want to reduce that polarization. We want to bring people together in conversation and camaraderie.
If we hear each other's stories, seek not to destroy each other merely with arguments.
Braver Angels is an antidote to the despair that it is so easy to feel.
But to be understanding of the human place from which our differences of opinion derive, and recognize the fact that the true project of democracy is not winning an election. It's living with each other, regardless of whether we win or lose.
Hey man, if you're ever around, don't get no Airbnb. I have a free room in my apartment.
You're the best, man. It's been really
lucky, dog. That's a good encounter, man.
It has been, goodness, it's been a pleasure, like an absolute pleasure.
That's
and
how
I cannot wait for you to see this film.
Man,
Truly.
I look forward to it, man. That's how you meet the best people in your life, man.
And when people start thinking of themselves as fellow citizens of something, regardless of all their differences with each other, that is how you have the beginning of a nation. And so when that struck me, I was like, oh, psh, so that's what America is. Well, actually, that makes sense. It's not an idea, it's not a land, it's not a people, or rather, it's not just any of those things. It's all of those things and more. The thing that I love about driving around the West is you see all the vastly different American landscapes. You see the high peaks of the Rockies and the ice volcanoes of the Cascade Range and the unending deserts of the Southwest, including the Red Rocks here in the Colorado Plateau. And then, of course, the Mississippi Delta, the vastness of the plains, and then the forests of the East Coast, the swamps of Florida, and the Northeast. How could I forget the Northeast? All these landscapes, they're incompatible. They don't make sense together. They don't make sense together at all. They're so different. They're so diverse. They're each beautiful in their own way. And the thing about them is they all are part of the same system of the American land. If you were to lop off any part of them, America wouldn't be America. The American people, the American experience is the exact same way. You just have to see all of it. You have to love all of it if you're gonna love any of it. That's the union.
I know there's a big election coming up, and I know everyone's, trying to go to their corners and make it this big polarizing life or death choice. And so everybody's pointed towards this first Tuesday of November when we have the election. And I have always believed that the most important day in America is not the first Tuesday of November, it's the first Wednesday of November.
Right.
Because on the first Wednesday of November, people all over this country are gonna wake up, they're gonna take care of their kids, they're gonna go to work, they're gonna coach Little League, they're gonna help a neighbor in need, and that's the fabric of the country.
I just believe that if we speak more, acknowledge each other more, all right? That would bring us closer. Because when you don't speak, you don't know.
There are ways, but you need to decide, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone. I'm going to try to find spaces where I can talk to other people, and it's not about politics.
That thing that keeps recurring, that solution that you want, is often internal. It's not external.
But I feel like that's the key. Like, if you don't proactively seek to talk with people who disagree with you today, then you just naturally echo chamber.
For somebody that vehemently disagrees with me, that absolutely disagrees with me, but is willing to give me the time to civilly discuss those differences, because the founders believed that that's the way we would perfect this great republic.
Whatever its faults, whatever our indiscretions, whatever we have done to not live fully up to our own ideals, America as an idea remains the prominent promise of what free people can accomplish when they come together.
There are people that disagree about everything else, but they agree that we have to change this. And that's what we're here to do.
Oh man, I cannot tell you how optimistic I am. There's so many reasons to be optimistic.
We're gonna get through this stronger, and we will have things to learn that we didn't expect we needed to learn.
Oh my days! That's it, that's the whole trip. Okay, I think we made it. Any advice for someone that feels isolated, feels like they can't interact with people anymore?
First of all, in Manhattan, these people walk with blinders. Everybody walks with a blinder, right?
Arizona people angry, no? After COVID, we chose not to extend ourselves.
Take the blinders away. Open your eyes.
You can be a good neighbor, but it's by choice. Patient, much better.
Smile at people that walk by. They smile back. Believe it or not, they smile back.
Help your fellow man or woman, you know, like just be human.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's very easy.
It's very easy.
Tell the guy what you think about that. What's wrong, guys?
I've loved this. I've absolutely loved this. If there's one thing that I've become entirely convinced of, for me, and I think for you too, there is hope to be had, there is adventure to be had in getting curious in the people around you. When it comes to these tense and polarizing topics, your viewpoints don't have to change, but with curiosity, everything else will.
We just have to believe in each other again.
There have been people along this trip that have genuinely changed my life, and I don't even know their names to thank them. That's the beauty of getting curious in strangers.
And I think that if we replace that fear with love, we can connect again.
The best part, you'll never run out. Even just back there, you'll never run out of strangers to me. You'll never find nothing to get curious about.
This is our time! We fight for each other here! We don't let each other go!
We just have to believe in love and let go of the fear. And that's how we stay connected.
Okay. What do you say for old time's sake? We plug in some inspirational music and round things out with a good old-fashioned montage. Thanks for coming on a road trip with me.
There's reason to believe, reason to hope, reason for American hope.
People all over the country who are rejecting the toxicity. And not only that, they are stepping up.
But it only works if we hear each other. It only works if we listen to one another.
As a student of history and as somebody who loves my country really deeply, I believe that there's not only reason to have hope, but there's almost a responsibility to have hope.
It will strengthen your most meaningful relationships.
So keep going, keep pushing forward.
I think we got to remember that we're on the same team.
A hopeful alternative is possible.
And they will look back on the work we did today and across all of these untied states of the United States of America and say that because these people hope, because they believe, the American dream endured for generations to come.